Okay. All right. So thanks everyone for coming to this Exploring Your Career Options, Entrepreneurship in Social Work and Nonprofits. My name is Kelly Schmidt. I'm a Student Advancement Specialist at the Mandel School. I'm going to pass it over to my other team members, Sharice, to do intros.
Hi, thank you all for coming to the Explore Your Career Options session. My name is Sharice Muse, and I'm also a Student Advancement Specialist at the Mandel School. And I'll pass it over to Dean McFarland.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Dean Kim McFarland and I serve as the Assistant Dean of Student Services and Career Planning with the Mandel School. And we're so delighted that our alumni and all of our student guests could be here tonight. And we're really looking forward to an engaging conversation. So thank you all for being here. I'll turn it back over to our team.
Thanks, Dean McFarland. All right. So we're going to get started. So just to give you all a little overview of the session, so welcome, and we're going to start with a little icebreaker, nothing too intense, that'll be on the next slide, and then we'll go into our introduction of our alumni panelists. We'll let them talk about a little bit of their background, give a little intro, and then we'll go straight into prompted Q&A that we have for our panelists. Feel free at that time to put your questions in the chat, but then we will have time at the end to also open it up for questions. For folks who registered and submitted questions, we have those too, so we'll bring them up as we go too. So nice, short and sweet, hoping for a really great discussion. So feel free, like I said, as we go along, you can even raise your hands to ask a question as we're going through, so. All right, so just a little check-in. I love these little meme check-ins where on a scale of memes, how are you feeling today? If you want to put it in the chat with the number that corresponds with the meme. I would say, like, for me, I just was snacking. So I think I would be number 2, the little koala bear, but feel free to put your answers in the chat. And see just based how you're feeling, safe space. So got some 3s. I like the 3s. A 9, I feel like 9s are understandable if depending on how you're feeling in the time of the semester. 5. I love that.
Someone put 8. That's
yeah, I like that too. I feel like
that.
We're all got some good vibes as we go into this session. So looking forward to see how our moods will be at the end too. Hopefully we'll all be 3s and 8s and 7s maybe. Awesome. So thank you all for sharing. So now we'll get into just our panel. So I'm going to stop sharing and just hand it over to Sharice.
Oh, so I thought we were going to do a brief feel and do an introduction. I'm sorry. So I don't know, we can start with Gillen maybe, and then we'll go to Devin and then Shannon to do a quick introduction, and then we'll start with the questions, the prompted questions. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Galan Mirwanji. I'm a proud alumnus of Case Western Reserve University School of Social Work and Law. I graduated in 2015. Currently, I'm working as the Director of Holistic Defense at the Harris County Office of Managed Assigned Counsel, which is in Houston, Texas. A little bit about the program, just so you know my little background. It's in criminal justice, especially criminal defense work. While I was at the School of Social Work, I interned with the Public Defender's Office, and ever since I have worked mostly in public defender offices, and the Managed Assigned Counsel is similar to that. If you all are interested, feel free to chat or text me or whatever you may need information, I can share more, but just wanted to give you a little bit of background of what I do. And I'm also looking over the social work team as part of the Holistic Defense Director. And I'm so happy to be here and share my experiences with you all. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Devin Jones. I am currently working for Case Western Reserve University in the School of Medicine's Department of Population and Quantitative Health Sciences. We work in Alzheimer's disease research, primarily focused in African American populations and people of color in general. The first time I moved here from Cleveland, I moved to Cleveland from Dayton, Ohio. I came here for graduate school, but since moving here, I found so much more community, a passion, something to pursue, and it's been an honor being here thus far. And I'm excited to be a panelist and to talk about important topics this evening.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon, and I am a school social worker in Denver. I graduated from the Mandel School in 2020 and absolutely loved my time there. I was in the MSSA program, and I had a specialization in children, youth, and families. While I was at the Mandel School, I tried internships with adults, and I worked at a domestic violence shelter for one of my internships, and then at the Cleveland Clinic Taussig Breast Cancer Center for the other. But ultimately, I found that I really missed working with kids and wanted to continue with them. So I've been in the field of school social work for about 3 years now, and I love it.
All righty, thank you all again. So we're going to start with our prompted questions. And the first one, if you can share a personal experience in advocating and negotiating desired salaries or other benefits throughout your career, and what has been some of the top lessons you've learned?
I can go first. I'll go briefly. It's like a story really of a couple of experiences that I've had. So after I graduated undergraduate, I was a double major and a double minor. And I didn't really have a choice, or I couldn't make a clear choice on where I wanted to go after I graduated. So I ended up working at a Colombian restaurant, making $9.50 an hour. And so over my gap year, I worked probably 12 different jobs. And by the end of my gap year prior to coming to Case, I think I made about $20 an hour was the top salary. And so after I graduated from Case, I had 2 master's degrees. I had all of these different things. I was an aging specialty, and I still found trouble getting the compensation that I wanted because I didn't know how to advocate or how to explain my work. And so one of the things that I've learned since then is when you're going to an employer, I think one of the most important things, number one, is to know your situation. I didn't have time to say no to a job, period. So if you are in a position where you are able to negotiate your salary, know the position that you're in and know what you need to, number one, survive, and number two, to strive. I think that was one of the biggest things that I had to learn over time, just working with Case Western Human Resources, because they hired me prior to me graduating. My income or my compensation was based off of me just having an undergraduate degree. And so it took months of me having to work with them and be patient with them and say, this is a new situation. This is why I feel like I'm qualified to go up in pay. And so first is patience. And well, number one is knowing your situation and what you need. And number two is being patient with your possible employer. And so there is a situation where you need to know when to fold and just say, okay, I want to get what I can get instead of trying to get what you would like to get. And so I would say it's a process. And so depending on what part of the process you're in, it's worth negotiating, but it's also worth knowing where to go with it.
Thanks, Devin. Anyone else?
Okay. Shannon, you're okay with me going?
Oh, yeah, you go ahead. I'll go after.
Okay. So for me, I think there are 2 things. One, I've learned over the past years that if I had not advocated for myself in the position I am, I would not be able to advocate for others. And so just a lesson one was to understand that when you are able to advocate for clients, you need to know how to advocate for yourself. So my first opportunity at doing that was when when I was applying for jobs, many of the times they would not want to count my internship program as part of experience, right? That was something they would not look at, which I advocated for strongly because it was in the same field. So there was no reason why it would not be. And number 2 that I learned was that when you're negotiating, I learned that never say what you want, because you don't know what they're ready to offer. So it was very interesting because if I would say, I'm happy with 50,000 because I thought that was the market rate, but market rate did not tell me in much, given that it's so different. And especially I learned that in states like Texas, where in Houston, the salary is very different than Austin or Dallas, or you go to the rural areas where there's a difference of $20,000, $30,000 for the same position. And so you can't really take an average of a market when you have such vacuums in the salary. And so for me, it was more being confident in my experience that I gained during school. Number two, understanding like other benefits beyond salary. So like, are they going to pay for my licensure? Are they going to be giving me a supervision? Is it going to be quality supervision that I really want? Is this the supervisor I want to work for? You know, and so, and did I research the organization? Because early on, you do want to know what you're getting into and what you really want to get out of it. For some people, it is money. For some people, because they need to survive. And for some people, it is more about the experience, and many fall in between where they want both. And so that balance is really important. And knowing that this is not going to be your last place to work at least that's where I come from. Wherever I go, my employer knows that I will leave them. There is nothing that is going to keep me until there's something miraculously happening. And that's totally fine, because that is only how they will know your worth. Many times people do the opposite by thinking that, oh, you're not going to be loyal. But I think loyal is unique because, as you can see right now, when people want to lay off people, they are laying off people by the thousands. And so there is no real loyalty going on. So for me, it was more about what I can do for the profession rather than just the job, the person, or the employer. What am I doing as a whole for the profession? Which is why I have multiple jobs, if you look at my resume, but I've still stuck to criminal justice work. And that has really given me an upper hand as I am negotiating. And I have so many stories, but just some that I just wanted to share. And about licensure and all is really important because that can get very costly if you have to pay out of pocket.
I can go ahead and share a recent experience. I actually negotiated my salary for the first time last week. So it was a great experience overall. I began by sharing about my licensure and my years of experience, and why I wanted the desired salary that I was asking for, and kind of highlighting what skill set I would bring. And it's at an organization that I've already been working for more than a year. Unfortunately, my negotiation was not successful. However, I feel like I learned a lot from the process. It led to a really good discussion with my direct supervisor. I learned a lot more about how the process works. At school specifically, there is a salary schedule, so negotiation isn't always as normalized. There's a salary schedule based on your years of experience and your degrees that's pretty set in stone due to the budget. But although they denied the salary I was asking for, I feel like I have a firmer understanding of how the process works and how the decisions are made. And I do feel like it led to a very valuable conversation with my organization. So I think the biggest fear I had with negotiating was that it was going to lead to, I think a lot of people have this fear of, oh, what if I lose my job if I try to negotiate, or what if this happens or that happens? But I think it was very empowering for me. And I think, if anything, my organization respected me for choosing to negotiate. And I don't think it had any negatives. So to echo what others were saying, I think it's always wise to negotiate and to give it a try, no matter what the outcome might be. So that was my experience, and I look forward to negotiating more in the future, giving it a try.
All righty, thank you all. And then we'll go on to the next question. How do you articulate your worth in a professional setting and manner? And how do you strategically promote your own skills that you learned in academic, practicum, or a volunteer setting?
Galan or Shannon, y'all go first. I went first last time. Galan, Shannon or Galan, one of y'all go first. I went first last time. I feel like I've been speaking too much.
Can you repeat the first part? That was
Yeah, we can do it in a two-part. How do you articulate your worth in a professional setting and manner? And then we can go on to the second part after we answer.
You said worth, right? WRTH. Worth, yeah. For me, again, one, being comfortable with who you are. So you really have to be genuine, and understanding the skill sets you have and what you're bringing to the table is really important. When you know what you're bringing to the table, while also being humble about what you're going to learn from that organization, because we will always learn. Even if we know what we know, every organization does it differently. So there is something that you will learn from the organization, and there's something that you're going to give to the organization. So when you come from that place, they know your worth, you know your worth, and you come from a place of confidence, and you come from a place of learning and teaching. And that's really important in social work, because you're always learning, growing, and teaching at the same time, even if we're on the front line, just newbie social workers, or we have done this for 10 years. Everybody is growing and learning at the same time, because there's so much going on in our field. Number two, I would say worth comes from understanding where there is discrepancies, whether that is pay scale, whether that is the structure of the organization. Like first things I would go and see, because I work in a hybrid kind of a office where we have, and it's a very interdisciplinary team where we have lawyers, social workers, investigators, we have client advocates, just a combination of professions. And many a times you will see attorneys having offices with windows, while you will see social workers would be in non-window offices, or they would have cubicles. And this sounds like very small, but to me, for some reason, it irked me a lot, to the point where I had to keep bringing it up till they changed it, because they kept saying, oh, it just happened to be that way. And I just could not accept that it could happen, because it just doesn't, at least even if that was not the intent, the impact was there, because if I'm affected, I'm sure somebody in my team could be also. And so why not make it fair and draw in a hat and have everybody at whatever office they get? And that makes it fair, because there's no reason why only an attorney should be having a window office. There should be no reason why. And the worst part, when you talk about that attorney's license can only be renewed and paid for, while my social workers were not being paid for their renewals, when it is part of the job requirement, right? But sometimes they would be smart by saying it's not a requirement, it's a preference, like licensure. And I'm like, well, we still hired everybody with a license. So if that was our preference, then we used it in the hiring. And so for that reason, they need to be paid for license renewals. So we got that done. So I think the worth comes from understanding and calling out, but in a very respectful way, because you have to be tactical in offices, because there's always politics. This is just being true here. There's always politics. You have to be careful. You have to know how you're talking, what you're bringing up, and when you can put the emotional side behind you and bring just facts, right? Like you can, and that is why you always need a venting friend, I always say, where they don't know anything about the office, they don't know anybody in the office, you can just share whatever you want to say it however you want, and then take the facts of the case or whatever the situation it is and bring it into the office. And that's what been it's been very helpful to me, because without that, and have a friend that understands the profession. For sure, they should at least understand where you're coming from. That has been very helpful. Having the worth comes also from understanding that while you're getting supervision, clinical supervision or non-clinical supervision, those are the opportunities to really learn and tap into getting insight about your office, about your experience from somebody outside, but somebody who has the expertise and skills. And so use that, apply that. Don't do it just because you have to do it for a license and you just want to get through it, but really integrate that into your work experience. And that has really been helpful, because then it doesn't feel like, oh, I have to sit for 2 years and do it, but also it brings worth to your work. And if you are, like for me, when people sometimes may think that I bring up this a lot, like, oh, I'm brown or I'm gay or something, but this is who I am. And it is important to be comfortable and share that. And if you feel you're being treated differently, know your worth, that this is what I'm bringing and this is how I'm feeling. Whether you want to even if you're thinking you're not making me feel that way, it's important to share that. And the only reason why you want to do that is not necessarily only to bring change in the office, but to let others voice their comfort in bringing these things up. And it is about other people too. When you're voicing for yourself, you're allowing space for others in many ways, because you're starting that in that culture. And so worth comes also from culture. So it's like a macro meso thing that goes on, but these are some of the tips I wanted to share.
Thanks, Dylan.
I can share a few things. So for me, I think developing a strong relationship with my manager has been very helpful, and being able to articulate to the management what I'm looking to get out of the job as well. I think while I am working and I have a caseload and I have these specific responsibilities for longevity and for sustainability at my workplace, I also need to have the CEUs and the training opportunities and the supervision. And so I think being able to articulate the things that I want out of the job too, and kind of thinking of it as a partnership, has helped me to put that on their radar so that they can then share those opportunities with me when they come along, or they might have me in mind for a certain conference or a certain training, because I did share that I'm interested in those things. And then working in a school setting is unique in the sense that I am one of the only mental health providers there. And so a lot of people at my work are teachers, of course. And then we have administrators and people in different roles. And so I think when I first started in the field, which wasn't that long ago, just a few years ago, I kind of assumed that everybody had this trauma-informed lens and this understanding of mental health. But I came to find that that wasn't the case. And a lot of the teachers that I worked with didn't have that same background I did. And that became more clear. And over time, I've realized that it is an asset to have that mental health background and that clinical experience. And that's something that makes me unique as an employee as compared to some of the people that I work with. And so keeping in mind that our skill sets are different and that we can learn from each other in that way has helped me to realize my worth in the work environment. And then I also have a supervisor outside of my organization, which I think really helps to have her to lean on as someone who just understands some of the challenges that I might face with my caseload or day-to-day work. When I'm having a day of self-doubt or I might be feeling a little bit unsteady, she reminds me to self-advocate and reminds me to lean on my skills. And so I think having someone like that in your corner, whether it's a supervisor or a coworker, can make a world of difference. So you don't feel isolated wherever you're working.
I just want to first uplift what Yolanda and Shannon both shared. I think those are both amazing points, especially the collaborative relationship between you and your employer. And secondly, just the knowing your worth and being yourself authentically. Yolanda, that's very powerful. And I think to piggyback off of both of them, I would say one of the best ways of proving your worth or showing your worth in professional settings as social workers, my job is not being a social worker. So I brought the talents and abilities of a social worker to this space. And so one of the things about that is priding myself and ensuring myself that I know how to serve the population I'm working with. And that is one of the most important ways to show your worth or to prove your worth is through the results of the work that you do. And this is people work. This is more complicated than any AI generated software could create. And so when we talk about knowing your worth, a lot of it comes from your experience and intentions. And so that often will push all of those different task items and all of those different objectives you may set. And so one of the most important things I think about articulating our worth in the workplace is understanding how to serve those that we want to work with and be effective at it. And an example of this could be, So me and my colleague, he got his graduate degree from Case in medical anthropology. I did mine in MSA and MNO. And when we came together, we're one of the very few teams on Case Western's campus with 2 Black men working in the African American population. And so there was this idea that it was a struggle making events and making community connections. And what we did was we started from the bottom. We started from the idea of being service providers or service connectors before researchers, right? And so understanding what was the needs of the people that we chose to serve, instead of seeing how we could get something from it. And so it's all about, understanding that process of building trust. And so over this time of us working and being very passionate and intentional about serving older adults in a meaningful way, the first year that we worked, we did about 60 events. And so this year is from January to now, we've done 32 events. And so total, we've done about, 92 events this year, or over the past year and a half. And so I think one of the most important things about articulating your worth is showing how valuable and effective you could be to the people you're serving. It would be very hard for an employer to ignore that. And the second thing I would definitely say is, and I know this is kind of counterintuitive when we're talking about worth, is understanding your weaknesses, right? And so when you understand your weaknesses, you're able to see how you could work in a collaborative group to find those people who have those strengths, or to find those ways to fill in those gaps. And secondly, it'll help you and prevent you from overpromising. I've been in certain situations where I've been employed and I've overpromised because I didn't understand my true limitations. And I didn't understand the learning curve of certain things, right? You get into a job and think they have something you could do immediately and find out, no, I can't do this. An example I have for that is when I worked at the Cleveland Department of Aging, I kept saying I was going to get OSHIP certified. This is the hardest curriculum in the state of Ohio. And so I didn't get certified. I would be honest with you all. But it's really about, understanding your strengths and your weaknesses to know where you fit perfectly. Because one thing for sure is you deserve to be happy in the place that you work and to be effective. And so when you understand your worth, you understand how to assess the situation you're walking to and understand how you can make a difference and how they should compensate you or how they should treat you based off of that. And so I do appreciate Glenn and Shannon. That was a good way of putting what I had in context. So, yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you all again. The next question is, what advice would you give your graduating self if you can go back, and what do you wish you had known back when you graduated from the Mandel School?
So I could go first because I wrote down some points. The first one that I would definitely know, like we were just talking about, is understanding your value, right? And it's not just from the experience standpoint, but also from your abilities, from the attributes you may have, being of color or being in the LGBT community. These are all different things that add to your value proposition because of the experience and the perception it gives you. And that perspective is really important. Number two, do your research and understand where people with similar talents have landed. And so that may be getting a mentor, that may be continuing those relationships with the people you are with in your cohort, whether it's here at CWRU or at CSU. I do often suggest to people, if you are at CWRU, go speak with people at CSU Social Work School too. And understanding your trajectory based off of what you have seen other people accomplish, and try to make visions that are in realistic time, right? Understand where you could be based off of these certain steps that you may take. Number three, very similar. Get a mentor that understands how to advocate for your worth and to make sure that you're in a place and space that you're actually happy in. And so I remember we have a question about mentorship. I think it's really important to think about if the person you're trying to have become your mentor doesn't necessarily put you to work, but shows you the value of doing work. And so it's very important when you think about picking someone that can help lead you through making very tough career decisions. Are they relatable? Are they passionate about the work they do? Do they have the capacity to help you? I think that was one of the most important things. I graduated with multiple mentors. Some of them wanted things from me. And so they put me to work in organizations. I was thinking I was getting leadership from them, but instead I was being of service. And then I had mentors that would answer the phone at 12 a.m. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to approach this situation. I made this mistake. And they spent the time and poured into me. And so picking those mentors is probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give myself. I would tell me to fine tune it. But for you all, I would say find that person that you can relate to and who is just as passionate about the work that you want to do, so you can understand your trajectory or where you could land based off of their advice and their experiences. And the last thing is make sure you stay specific while also being broad. And what I mean by that is, when I first came to Mandel, I was a community practice specialty. But I shifted to aging because I was always a community-oriented individual, but I needed something specific when the community to attach myself to the work in. And so when I decided to go for aging, it still had a community focus, but it had a specific community to engage with. And so the point I'm making is, you may want to get into working with kids, but have something that is specific about working with kids while still being able to manage or maintain or work within the larger spectrum of children or the specialty of children. And so it's kind of striking a balance between being very pointed and specific and being also very adaptable to different situations or different professions that you may land in with that social work background. So that's my last one. So yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
For me, I would say first, congratulate yourself that you're not graduating, or that's a huge deal because I was so proud of myself. So congratulate yourself. Number two, the resources are really around you already. So tap into that, which is your own professors, your like with Kimberly, I've been in touch with for the last year, and I've asked her so many questions beyond just these presentations, like about just what can this licensure be used for clinical purposes or whatever it may be. I think your resources are right around you. Your professors are experts in their fields. They are well known. A lot of jobs come their way. They'll share with you on emails. I still get those. And I think that is something you really want to keep connections with. Your schoolmates that will go on to doing great things in their careers, make sure that you are still in touch with them, learning whatever field they go into, because it really does connect in many different ways. Another thing for me that was a learning thing that I learned later was that I always thought because I was a community practice major specialization, and now I am like fortunately for me, my main day job, I don't require to be a LCSW, which is why I am where I am. However, I am also doing therapy on the side. And it's very interesting that I am fortunate that I worked towards getting my clinical hours, and I'm still working towards it, but I never thought I would be doing clinical practice. So I would say after you graduate, even if you think you're not doing it, if you're getting free clinical hours, or if your employer is providing that to you, go for it and get done with it. Because you just never know when you may need it or how employers may look at it. There is still something about it that employers feel like, oh, this is more worthy than an LMSW. I don't know why, but some employers do. Some come because of lack of knowledge, and some just because their jobs do need an LCSW. And so they rightfully think so. So whatever it may be, get your hours done with. Another thing I would say is find positive people in your life and strong people in your life, because when you have strong advocates around you, and I call them fighters because I have a lot of friends who are fighters and they're always fighting at every job they go, they're advocating for themselves. They'll be tapping into issues that are not even theirs, it's their coworkers, and they'll be trying to help them out with their bosses or whatever. Those strong people really will also help you understand where you need to stand, but also when you don't need to get into things. So there's a lot of learning that comes from strong individuals around you. And I'm grateful for all the friends that I have around that. Another thing is that your first job also doesn't mean it may not work out, doesn't mean that you give up, doesn't mean that that you made the wrong career choice. It could just mean there could be a personnel issue. It could be that maybe population is not of interest to you, but social workers can do a lot of things. So don't put yourself in a box. You can go from policy to consulting to private industries to community clinics, schools, you name it, we are there. And also, when you're looking for jobs, don't just put in search engine social workers, because a lot of times the job titles do not say social workers anymore. When I'm hiring in the future, many of my titles will be saying a mitigation specialist. And for that, we usually do prefer to have social workers. And so just be mindful that what you are thinking can also go into how you talk and how you type and how you write. And so have a broad mind and a broad experience. And if you have time while you're at school, I don't know when you're graduating necessarily, but you could be all over in the years, try to take as many classes you can, even those that you may not think are interest of you or can interest you. And because really you will learn a lot. I don't think there's any class that you cannot learn from. You will always learn, you'll learn to apply it, because when you go into the real life, you will not get a particular situation that which will fit right into your experience. You will have to integrate. And so you just have to learn how to make the most of situations. And the same you would want to do with your field placements. You know, you may want to think that this is what I want to do and try that, but also try something that could be different, but still of interest to you, but different. So just variety and being proud of who you are and being strong and knowing what you bring to this world and to this table, and that social workers are needed. And we are lucky to have the community we have at Case Western. And many of times we don't realize that while we are there. It's only after a few years we recognize, oh, those were some great times. And that's a great school, because still today, people know Case Western, and the alumni are all over the country. And also be on LinkedIn if you can. Yes, go on LinkedIn, because that's really important, because you make a lot of networking and connections. That's important, and you can do it right now while you're in school. That's all.
Great. Yeah, so for me, my first job was incredibly challenging and stressful. I stayed there for 1 year. I started my career during COVID. And so that was also extremely difficult. And so looking back on that experience, something that comes to top of mind is it's okay to leave a job after a certain amount of time. And sometimes the job has an expiration date. I stayed at this job for 1 year. I was under a lot of stress. The job was impacting my mental health. However, I learned so much from the experience as well. I earned a lot of supervision hours. But I think the biggest lesson I learned was from my direct supervisor, who, although we worked in an organization that was not the easiest organization to work at, my supervisor had really strong boundaries herself. She'd been a clinical social worker for several years, and she was the first supervisor I had who truly set boundaries and showed that example for me. Past supervisors didn't really have strong boundaries, and so I had never really seen that in the social work field to that point. And so what I learned from her is the importance of setting boundaries. And that's a lesson that has really, really stuck with me, and is something that I really needed to learn. And if I hadn't learned that, I don't think I could still be at my current position, because I have to set boundaries every day. And so although the job was difficult, it was worth it. And so I think my biggest piece of advice would be to explore. And if you choose a job and it's challenging, as all jobs are, but it's okay to leave and move on to another opportunity. Something else that I learned is to echo is personal connections and the importance of those as well. The job that I have now, I found through a social work friend who I used to work with before I came to CASE. And that friend was living in Denver, which was where I was moving. And she was kind of a loose connection, but she was able to help me get connected to the school that I currently work at. So I think I spent a lot of hours on Indeed and kind of just submitting applications, and when really all it took was kind of this one loose connection. And so really taking advantage of those personal connections around you and thinking about who's in your network beyond just close friends or people that you're very comfortable reaching out to. It could be a really loose connection that ends up getting you the job that's the right fit. And congratulations, because graduating is a really big deal and very exciting. Yeah.
Thank you again. Thank you for our panelists and sharing your experience. Dean McFarland or Kelly, did you have any other questions before we move into the session for the participants? I know we had some couple of questions when students registered for the session. So I didn't know if you had another question before we move into that part.
Yeah, thank you all again for sharing. I just, based on some of the questions and some of the things you all have touched on, but getting more into the idea of entrepreneurship, and I think Galan, you had touched on this too, as far as like side hustle or using some of those skills that maybe there was a word pigeonhole that one submitter, like getting pigeonholed in therapist or getting pigeonholed in, you know, policy work, and you still have interest in other ways. Like, how can you promote those skills or utilize them? I know that's kind of I was trying to do a encompassing kind of thing with a question, but yes, does that make sense? We'll start with Galan maybe, and then feel free to add in.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because I was a very traditional employee where I saw it's a day job and that's all I need to do. And I give my day and evening all to it and weekends to it. And then I realized over time that, as Shannon said, boundaries, right? Like there has to be certain boundaries that you want to build to make sure not only for self-care, but also to know you're putting your best foot forward. And so when I started putting some boundaries in the sense like, okay, my day job is 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 or whatever it looks like, can I do something? Because I'm at this place where I have time to do things and I'm able to do things. And so I wanted to see if I could tap into therapy. And I spoke to other therapists around, and what I learned was I was not ready to leave my day job to be a therapist. I just wanted something that I could learn from, grow from. You can make, you know, decent amount of money on the side by doing that, and you can uphold your licensure requirements and all of that stuff. And especially now that it's done remotely, it is so much more possible to do those things which were not possible before the pandemic. And so for me, I again took some mentors that I had in mind. I spoke to some people. There's a lot of need for, I know, therapy in my population, especially South Asian, LGBT, youth. And so I said, why not give something back to the community if I can? And I slowly started working with that population. I still do it only on the part-time, which is fantastic. I can make my own time. I can choose as many clients I want. I'm not risking my day career, right? It's allowed to work side, but also I'm not like leaving my day career because I didn't want to do that. You know, I love working for the government. I have a lot of passion for the criminal justice field, but I also got to enjoy the side work that I'm doing as a therapist for the population I'm working. And I thought I would just do it for a few months and then see how it goes. It's been 1.5 years and I don't see it going anywhere, and I'm enjoying it. I can't take more, like I'm not taking more clients in the sense, but it just shows that there is so much need for it. And you can do it both if your lifestyle allows it. It's not for everybody, but if your lifestyle allows it, it's affordable now because you can do from your own home. You can work from your home, for me, it's been a really good medium of even allowing me to get away from my day job. The stress, it's like a distraction in some way where I feel like it's not stressful, rather it's comforting in some way. And then when I want to get away from that, I go to my day job. And then of course I still have weekends available. I'm still doing a lot of fun stuff. So it's not like I'm, you know, all day just working. Somehow there's still a lot of time in this, I don't know, in my week that I still have. So for me, I think it's very doable. And I would say, go for it. Don't be shy, because I know I have friends who've not gone through it because they're scared. Oh, how am I going to process it with the insurance? Am I going to ever be able to diagnose a client? Get good people around you. Get that clinical supervisor that we're talking about to talk to through these things, because that is the moment. If you're going to shy away from diagnosis, or you're going to shy away from using the DSM-5, or feeling scared about how you're going to do paperwork with the insurance, you will never learn. And so what I'm saying is, be ethical, be responsible, and you can do that as a side hustle without making it think like a side hustle, but making it seem like this is something that interests you, by keeping your day job as well, if that's important to you. And then slowly see if you want to really move into being an entrepreneur. This way, it was, at least for me, it was the least risky option. And I worked through somebody who is already, I'm working with somebody, or for them, which has 15 years of experience. So I get to learn a lot. The paperwork is already done there. I'm using an online profile that is set up. So, just like, it was an easier way for me to get into it and balance my day job without taking a huge risk or a leap.
Shannon, did you want to go? I can go.
Sure. Yeah. I'll just speak real quick. Or would you like to go?
No, take your time. I'm good.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak a little bit to the clinical social work side. I think it can be easy to feel pigeonholed into direct practice. And I think it's been helpful for me to remind myself that our skill set is transferable. And although right now I want to stay as a school social worker, I'm aware that my trajectory could change, and that I could explore a career in a different field, or more at the macro level, or higher education is something I've thought about and dabbled in. And so I think just reminding yourself that there are opportunities outside of the work that you currently do. And I'd also be happy to speak to anyone who is considering school social work that might be on the call. I do love the school calendar. We have summers off and breaks, which does make it nice for if you want to start a private practice, or if there's another career interest that you have on the side, that you have the time to do that with this niche in the field.
Thank you, Shannon and Galan. I appreciate you both. I think that was awesome. Once again, very spot on, very helpful. And I just kind of want to piggyback off of what Galan was saying about, I at first assumed that a 9-to-5 was going to be enough and going to be fulfilling in itself. But one of the things that I have learned is there are many facets of my personality and the purpose that I serve. And so in many different ways, I was pushed to do more, or to start more, based off of this, I would say, this passion to pursue effective work, or to be of use. And so one of the things that I did was, as soon as I had graduated, me and a business partner, and she also went to Mandel as well, we started a consulting business. And so we started Crown Connections. It is a nonprofit consulting business. And so at the time, I was the only one working full time. Katie was not working at the time. But fast forward a year and a half from now, it was probably one of the best decisions that I made, because not only did we make a consulting service based off of these different needs for a nonprofit, it allowed me to explore all of the interesting ways that nonprofits and people do things of service for people and need help. And so, of course, it's a business on the outside, but on the inside, it is a way of learning more and doing more and finding ways to be of a better use to the community around me. And so I think one of the most important things about entrepreneurship is this idea of you fully finding ways to express yourself. And so when you go into business, you don't go into business into things you're not passionate about. You don't go into business about things that you don't care about. And so I think, and one of the main things for social workers is we're very deep individuals, and that's why we choose to be of service and to help other individuals. And so when you think about people trying to make a difference in organizations, it's very important that we find as social workers ways to empower them and ways for them to be as effective as possible. And so I think entrepreneurship is a really good opportunity for social workers, because it really teaches you how to be in the human business and be effective at it. Secondly, going to what Shannon was saying about the clinical work, I still haven't got my LSW. I took the test in January and failed it by 9 points. And so one of the things about it is I have decided to remain persistent. I'm taking it again in May, and I have an opportunity to do clinical work or direct practice work on the side, but I've been hesitant. And so do not pull a Devin is what I'm saying. When you think about the full spectrum or the full potential of being a social worker, it's not about just starting businesses. It's about finding the best ways to be of use to people. And so I'm going for my licensure. The first time I took it, I think I was more worried about making more, doing more. But as I've been studying and as I've been getting more focused into it, I'm finding that I have to come into it with the right intentions of being of service and to help people. But the bottom line is there's so many different avenues and so many different ways that you can do this as a social worker. And if there's anyone who is an MNO or a JD dual degree, it's even more avenues. And so do not, like one of the words we said, pigeonhole ourselves into thinking that a 9 to 5 is enough for us. It is not. Even if it's not starting a business and it's just doing volunteer work with the organization, taking their notes, or doing volunteer work at the shelter. All of these things are able to help you expand your experiences, expand your perspective, and learn different ways of using the skill sets and the tools that you learned in this part of your graduate career. So.
All righty. Well, thanks
you.
again.
Oh. Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
Thanks again to the panelists. And I was going to open it up for questions, but Kelly, if you had something else you wanted to say before we do that.
No, I just wanted to thank you all and like recap it because I think there was a couple other questions that we might not get to, but if you're all willing maybe to connect with folks, and then also it just sounds like connections and networking, knowing yourself, boundaries, some of those things are some themes I just wanted to touch on. But yes, open up for questions if folks want to come off mute and ask as well. We did get one question, I got one about, this kind of relates to all of you kind of touched on it, and Shannon especially, just if you're having issues with the amount of work you're getting and having, let me just read it real quick. If you're feeling like you're taking on too much, but your organization is pushing back a little bit and saying like you can handle it, and sort of how to navigate that, which can be really tricky. And this is actually in reference to a field experience, but this is would be applicable in job as well.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. And I think beginning with a conversation with your either your hiring manager or your supervisor, and making sure they're aware that you're feeling this way is a good first step. Making sure that they know how burned out you're feeling, because burnout is a very real symptom of, it can be, of the work that we do. And so as a supervisor, they will be familiar with that. So I think articulating that, and then letting them know maybe specifically what it is that's causing the burnout. I think being prepared for that type of meeting can be really helpful, so that you can be solution oriented with your supervisor and kind of letting them know, you know, I feel as though having 30 students or clients is too much for me, but what if I did 25, or, you know, kind of working with them to meet in the middle. But I think just being transparent and seeing if you can find a solution in the organization. If after that point, you know, you've tried and it is impacting your mental health, again, I would just say it's okay to move on from an organization that is not the right fit for you.
That's right. And just to kind of piggyback off what Shannon said, it took me a very long time to learn no is a full answer. It is a full sentence, and it is completely acceptable. And so you know, when we're thinking about employers, I know it may feel like sometimes you don't have a choice or you don't have an option, but no is a full sentence. And if that requires or that leads to you having to find another job or them not taking it well, this is one of those things you have to be able to stand up for yourself and know when enough is enough. Because one of the things about burnout is it's something that you can recover from, but in certain situations, it does a lot of damage. And it takes time to heal from because a certain part of it leads to doubt or in your abilities or your ability to be effective. And the second thing about it is I am the type of person, if I had heard the wrong thing from my supervisor just once, I would be on LinkedIn during that Zoom call looking for another job. And so one of the things I had to make sure before I took the job that I'm at now was that my supervisor was supportive and understood the type of worker I was and the type of passion I had for the job that I'm doing. And so when you are in the interviewing process, don't think of it as a one-way road where they could just ask you questions. This is a really good time to see how supportive of an organization, how supportive of the supervisor or manager that person is. This is the perfect time to do that. And I always say, if there is any signs that they are forceful or they don't respect your boundaries, be very careful treading into that position. Be very careful because one of the most important things about being an effective social worker is being a good person to yourself and putting yourself in a situation where people do not acknowledge your personhood or do not respect it. It's a very hard place to be in. And so, yeah.
I can quickly just say that for the thing that you spoke about in terms of like the challenges with the supervisor, one I would say is in the interview, it has been always hard for me to learn about employers because it's like a date where they send you the best representative. So you will never know what exactly is happening. And that is why you only learn about the BS when you go into the organization. So always take that with a grain of salt. However, try to meet your direct supervisor in the interview and ask them questions. And because that's number one. Number two, I would say is come with solution, be solution focused. So even if before you get into the burnout, you should, if you know what you're getting into and you know that this is what the casework looks like, data plays a huge role. And whenever I have tried to come around with burnout and I've said, oh, I feel a certain way, nobody really cares because feelings, nobody cares, though they say in social work, we care. They're like, oh, I really feel bad for you, but you know, we are just stuck. Everybody has to do it, so do you. So it's like a fairness thing then. Right? Like if other employees are doing it and they're doing 40 cases, you have to do 40 cases. And so for me, it was more like solution focused where I could be taking data. And I was like, well, if we're doing this is not coming with the outcome we really wanted. So why don't we look around a certain different way? And that really helped me in pushing my cases a different direction where we had to stop taking like housing cases because there was no housing. Why am I getting all these housing referrals when there's no housing really out there? So why don't we partner with a housing agency? And so that was like a solution to creating my caseload going down and the type of cases I was getting. Number three, understanding what is your strategy in this, because I'm just all about strategy for some reason. I'm strategizing all the time. Like, what is the strategy? What do I want to really get out of this? Do I want to really lose the job or do I want to go up the track in this position? And it's all about communication, relationship building, and rapport building, and then of course your boundaries. But coming from a place of strength and solution focus is really important. And then of course, if everything doesn't work, then that's not the organization for you because you really did come with a lot of work and ideas. And supervisors love people who come with ideas, who are trying to find solutions to the problems in a respectful way though. Yes, that's all.
I just want to chime in one more thing. I think it can also be helpful to ask to speak to someone in the organization who is in your role, because as was said, sometimes they are trying to sell the position or they might not be telling you everything. And so really getting that opportunity to speak to someone who's in your role and asking them what it's really like, and asking about the turnover too.
Yes, thank you all so much. I know we're at 7 and I'd love to keep having this conversation. We had more questions come through, but you can always follow up with us. I'm going to put some links in and pass it over to Dean McFarland just for wrap up.
Okay, thanks, team. And wow, I was just blown away by the experience, expertise, and wisdom that our panel shared tonight. And I want to thank each of you on behalf of our team for taking time out of your busy lives to join us and really pour into all of our current students who are on the job market or will be soon. So thank you for sharing. And to our students who joined tonight, thank you for investing your time in yourself and in your own professional and career development. This is so important to take these steps. There are a few links that Kelly will drop in the chat and that we will share with everyone after tonight's session. I'll quickly share those. I know folks may need to leave, but we'll make sure that we have our email alias as well as our career planning page so that you can always link with us. Remember that importance of networking and the Alumni Career Network at CASE that is accessible to any student at any point in the program. So we encourage you to get involved. And as you move toward the end of your degree program at the Mandel School, we have the Student Mentorship Program. And that will be something you'll learn about and be able to connect with as well. So lots of opportunities. We also want to encourage you to connect with your student advancement specialists for career and professional development support. But then also there will be some links in the chat to the Case Western Career Services Department. So this group is available to help with interview prep, mock interviews, resume review, a host of services available to students. And then we have a lot of other tips and tricks with salary negotiation and interviews. So please be sure to check those out in your free time and as you're preparing for field or job interviews. But I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, our alumni panel. We can give them a virtual round of applause, and to our students who joined. I'll turn it back over to Kelly and Sharice if you have any final comments to make.
Oh, that was great. Thanks. And we'll send out the links so you all have it in one place. But thanks, everyone. We really appreciate it. Sharice, feel free.
Yeah, just say thank you. We really appreciate you all and our panelists and everyone for participating tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all and have a wonderful evening. Take care.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh.